when you're just going, hold on a second, everything you think is what it seems is not at all. So you have to start watching this at the beginning, looking for the clues.
For nearly 2 decades, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban seemed utterly untouchable, Hollywood's golden couple who had gracefully beaten all the odds. Their love story was a masterclass in navigating fame, family, and unwavering partnership. But behind the dazzling red carpets, the heartfelt love songs, and the picture-perfect interviews, deep cracks had been forming long before the world ever noticed. Now, in the wake of a shocking, albeit rumored, divorce, Nicole has finally broken her silence, and what she has revealed has left fans and followers completely stunned. From clandestine separations to insidious whispers of betrayal, her carefully chosen words have painted a starkly different picture of their so-called fairy tale marriage. Was it all just a masterfully crafted illusion? And what truly transpired between the superstar actress and the country music icon? Today, we uncover the speculative truth behind Nicole Kidman's quiet but powerful exposé of Keith Urban and why the world may never see them or their story the same way again. For almost 20 years, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban were enshrined in the public consciousness as the definitive example of lasting love in Hollywood. They were a rare, golden couple who managed to seamlessly blend global stardom with a grounded family life, creating a narrative that felt like a modern fairy tale. Theirs was a story of 2 Australian luminaries who found solace in one another amidst the relentless chaos of celebrity, building a marriage that seemed to defy every cynical headline about broken Hollywood relationships. But behind that impeccably curated image, small, almost imperceptible cracks had begun to form, and they were not nearly as invisible as the couple might have hoped. It began with a subtle, creeping distance, the kind that is easy to dismiss as a byproduct of their demanding careers. Keith's relentless touring schedule had him performing in a new city almost every night, a whirlwind of stages, flights, and adoring fans across the globe. Meanwhile, Nicole remained the anchor in Nashville, meticulously balancing the rhythms of motherhood with her ever-growing slate of prestigious film and television commitments. To outsiders, this arrangement looked like a healthy, supportive partnership between 2 ambitious, successful individuals. But for them, it was reportedly beginning to feel like they were living in 2 entirely different worlds, their lives running on parallel tracks that seldom converged. What started as weeks apart for professional reasons slowly bled into months, and when they did finally reunite, those precious moments were said to feel more like polite, scheduled check-ins than the warm, spontaneous homecomings their fans so fondly imagined. The first tangible signs of strain began to emerge from Nicole. In a series of interviews throughout 2024, she started speaking in vague yet poignant terms about trusting the process of change and the journey of finding her voice again. She would deliver these lines with her signature radiant smile, but for discerning observers, there was an unmistakable sadness lingering behind her eyes, a shadow of melancholy that her composed demeanor couldn't quite conceal. Her language shifted, often emphasizing themes of independence and introspection. She spoke of learning to be still, embracing solitude, and redefining what peace means to me. These were not the words of a woman securely anchored in a steady, fulfilling marriage. They were the reflective, preparatory words of someone quietly bracing herself for an unknown, solitary future. Then came the development that truly set tongues wagging: Nicole's decision to apply for Portuguese residency on her own. The fact that Keith's name wasn't attached immediately sparked a flurry of whispers that she was methodically preparing for a life that didn't necessarily include him. By the time the sweltering heat of summer 2025 descended upon Nashville, the hairline cracks in the marriage had widened into an unmistakable, unbridgeable fault line. What had once been a quiet, simmering emotional distance had now escalated into a physical separation. Insiders with intimate knowledge of the couple's situation revealed that Keith had discreetly moved out of their family home in early June. He took up residence in a smaller, more secluded property nearby. A move that, at first, he reportedly insisted to a concerned Nicole was merely temporary, a chance for them both to breathe and reset. But those who knew them best understood the gravity of the situation. This was not a pause. It was the definitive beginning of an end that neither of them could undo. Initially, both Nicole and Keith made a concerted effort to keep the separation under wraps, desperate to shield their daughters and their careers from the inevitable media storm. To the public, they continued their professional routines as if nothing had changed. Nicole was immersed in filming a demanding new limited series, channeling her turmoil into her performance, while Keith was on the road for the latest leg of his Speed of Now world tour. Behind the scenes, however, the chasm between them had grown into a profound silence. Communication, when it happened at all, was reportedly filtered through assistants or family intermediaries. Their conversations were clipped and logistical, focused more on the children's schedules and school activities than on the raw, complex emotions that were tearing their family apart. Friends later shared that the separation was not what Nicole wanted. She was said to be deeply hurt and bewildered by the turn their life had taken, but was resolutely determined to maintain her dignity and composure. She was the one holding out hope for reconciliation, one insider confided to Page 6. Nicole truly believed that if they could just pause everything, slow down, and find a way to reconnect away from the noise, things could be fixed. But Keith, sources claimed, had reached a critical breaking point. The accumulated weight of years spent trying to balance global fame, family obligations, and the immense pressures of maintaining a perfect public image had finally taken its toll. The separation wasn't dramatic or explosive. It was quiet and heavy, leaving two people emotionally exhausted. Nicole, ever composed, continued appearing in public with her signature calm, yet those close to her noticed she had stopped wearing her wedding ring. When the news finally broke at the end of September 2025, it sent immediate and powerful shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond. After nearly 20 years of a marriage that many considered an industry benchmark, Nicole Kidman had officially filed for divorce from Keith Urban. The legal filing, submitted quietly and without fanfare to the Davidson County Court in Nashville, listed the standard, sterile reason: irreconcilable differences. It was the same simple three-word phrase that has formally ended countless celebrity marriages. But in this particular case, it carried a far heavier, more resonant weight. For fans and observers who had always viewed Nicole and Keith as untouchable, those words marked the definitive end of an era. According to an exclusive report from People magazine, the divorce paperwork had actually been meticulously prepared weeks, if not months, in advance. This detail suggested that both sides had reached a comprehensive agreement long before the public announcement was made. The filing was not the result of a spontaneous, emotional decision. It was calm, deliberate, and incredibly detailed, reflecting a process handled with precision and forethought. The legal documents outlined a clear and structured plan for their future. Nicole was designated as the primary residential parent, a legal term confirming that their two daughters would live with her for the majority of the year. The arrangement was spelled out with mathematical clarity. The girls would spend precisely 306 days annually with Nicole and 59 days with Keith. This custody plan was a stark reflection of their current realities: Nicole's stable, established home base in Nashville versus Keith's nomadic and unpredictable touring schedule. What shocked the public even more, however, was what was conspicuously absent from the documents. Neither party requested spousal support or child support. Financially, both were independently wealthy, with their combined net worth reportedly exceeding $400 million. But it wasn't just the absence of financial battles that caught the media's attention. It was the overarching tone of the filing. Every clause was clean, controlled, and irrefutably final. It read less like a declaration of marital war and more like a quiet, dignified peace treaty between two individuals who had already made their peace with the outcome privately. Publicists for both stars released nearly identical statements, but eagle-eyed readers noticed a telling detail. Nicole's statement was released first, and Keith's echoed hers almost word for word, as though he had been advised to follow her lead. In the days and weeks that followed the seismic divorce announcement, the world collectively held its breath, waiting for Nicole Kidman to speak. Reporters camped outside her Nashville home, their cameras poised for any sign of movement. But Nicole offered them nothing, There was no formal statement, no tearful tell-all interview, no carefully rehearsed confession on a late-night talk show. There was only silence. And in the noisy, clamorous world of celebrity breakups, that silence spoke with more volume and authority than any press conference ever could. For years, Nicole had cultivated a reputation for her emotional honesty. So, when she suddenly went quiet in the face of such personal upheaval, fans and followers knew it was not by accident. Those close to her described it as a deliberate, strategic choice, a decision born not of bitterness, but of a desire for control. She was not going to allow the tabloids to define her story. Instead, she would reveal the truth on her own terms, in her own time, and in her own way. That moment of revelation came subtly, through a series of carefully chosen interviews and public appearances. During a promotional interview for her upcoming limited series, a journalist delicately asked how she was coping with recent life changes. Her response was calm, measured, and deeply telling. "I've survived a lot in my life, and I've learned that peace doesn't come from holding on. It comes from letting go." It wasn't framed as a direct confession, but to anyone listening carefully, it was a quiet but firm declaration of her newfound independence. Her silence, it became clear, was not a sign of avoidance. It was a masterclass in strategy. While Keith's name started appearing in speculative headlines, Nicole's public image remained pristine and untouchable. She simply lived her life. That powerful restraint became her loudest statement. She attended charity galas dressed in minimalist, elegant gowns, smiling for the cameras, with an aura of serene composure that was both captivating and slightly intimidating. Every public appearance seemed to telegraph a clear, unspoken message. "I'm fine. I'm moving forward. I'm free." Just when it seemed like the initial shock was subsiding, a new wave of headlines crashed onto the scene. And this time, the narrative tone shifted dramatically from heartbreak to scandal. Barely 2 weeks after the divorce filing, Page Six dropped a bombshell story that would ignite a media frenzy. Sources claimed that Keith Urban's growing closeness with one of his touring guitarists, a rising musician named Maggie Baugh, had played a significant role in the couple's split. The headline alone was enough to send fans spiraling. Maggie, a talented and charismatic musician in her late 20s, had been performing alongside Keith for over a year. On stage, they shared a palpable chemistry, the kind of dynamic interplay that fans had long described as electric and captivating. Almost immediately, videos from recent concert performances began circulating virally online, dissected frame by painful frame by an army of amateur sleuths. Comments poured in under every clip. "They look way too comfortable together. Something is definitely off here. You can see it in the way he looks at her when he thinks no one is watching." Suddenly, the internet was ablaze with theories and speculation. True to form, Nicole remained silent. She didn't engage with the rumors or retaliate with a counter-narrative. Yet her steadfast silence in the face of such explosive allegations only fueled the mystery. People began to ask with increasing urgency, was this what she had meant by letting go? Was her remarkable composure actually a quiet, dignified acknowledgement of a deep betrayal? Insiders and sources close to the couple offered conflicting accounts, muddying the waters even further. One source insisted to Page Six that Nicole had been aware of Keith's emotional distance long before the rumors became public. Another insider, staunchly in Keith's camp, vehemently denied everything, insisting their bond was strictly professional. But when investigative reporters began to dig deeper, the timeline of events started to look increasingly suspicious. Maggie had joined Keith's tour months before the couple's private separation, and astute fans pointed out that Nicole had not attended a single one of her husband's shows since the younger musician had joined the band. Maggie herself called the swirling rumors disrespectful, damaging, and completely untrue. But the damage had already been done. After the explosive rumors about Keith Urban's alleged connection with his touring guitarist erupted, the world waited for someone to offer a definitive confirmation or denial. But instead of clear statements, what the public received were clues. They were small, subtle, emotionally charged breadcrumbs scattered across concert stages, social media feeds, and red carpets. Fragments that, when pieced together, seemed to tell their own powerful story. The trail of clues began with the music itself. Keith returned to the stage with a renewed, almost ferocious energy, but his set lists had undergone a significant transformation. Gone were many of the joyful, romantic love songs he had once so famously dedicated to Nicole. They were replaced by tracks with heavier, more somber emotional tones, songs about regret, loss, and heartache. During a particularly emotional show in Dallas, fans noted that he performed "Blue Ain't Your Color," a poignant ballad about seeing someone you love in pain and being unable to help, with tears glistening in his eyes. This was no longer just a performance. It felt like a public confession delivered through melody. Around the same time, Nicole made a striking appearance at Paris Fashion Week. She attended a high-profile show dressed in an elegant, severe black gown. Her makeup was minimal, her hair was sleek and pulled back, and her hands were unadorned. Most notably, she was not wearing her wedding ring. The photos went viral instantly, sparking a torrent of comments from supporters. "She's officially done. That's her freedom look." But then came something no one expected, a cryptic post on Nicole's Instagram account. She shared a single, evocative black and white photograph of an open, cloud-filled sky with a simple, powerful caption: "Truth doesn't need defending." Fans and media outlets flooded the comments, universally interpreting it as her quiet, definitive response to the mounting rumors. Keith, on the other hand, gave interviews speaking of how sometimes you love someone so much, you stop seeing the cracks until it's too late. The internet immediately erupted with debate. Was he finally admitting his part in the breakdown? As the intricate story of the split continued to unfold in the public eye, a fascinating phenomenon occurred. The public began to pick sides. What had started as quiet curiosity soon metastasized into a full-blown cultural debate. On one side were those who sympathized deeply with Nicole, painting her as the dignified woman who had endured far too much for too long. On the other, loyal Keith Urban fans defended him fiercely, arguing that the media had twisted every word into a false narrative of guilt and betrayal. In the early weeks, sympathy leaned heavily toward Nicole. Her poise and emotional maturity struck a powerful chord with millions, especially women who saw her as a symbol of quiet strength. Social media lit up with hashtags like #TeamNicole, filled with messages from fans sharing their own stories of heartbreak and self-rediscovery. Many pointed out how she had spent years standing by Keith through his public struggles, his battles with addiction, the relentless touring. And yet, when it was over, she never once spoke ill of him. To them, that restraint was her ultimate power move. Keith, meanwhile, found himself in a complicated position. His fans from the country music world rallied around him, insisting that he was being unfairly villainized. But the problem was, his words and songs now carried different meanings. Every time he sang about regret, it felt like confirmation to the public that he had done something to break her heart. Nicole's public image, however, was transforming. She wasn't just seen as an actress anymore, she became a figure of empowerment. When she appeared on a magazine cover with the headline, "Starting Over at 57, it wasn't about sadness, it was about strength. The article quoted her saying, "I learned that silence can be its own form of truth. You do not have to explain peace." That line went viral, cementing a narrative of her graceful rebirth, while he was perceived as the one dealing with the messy aftermath. The months following the public split were filled with speculation and quiet displays of resilience, but the world still wondered what Nicole Kidman truly thought. Then, in late October 2025, she did something unexpected. Not an explosive interview, but a controlled, carefully curated statement that spoke volumes without naming names. In a conversation with Vogue Australia, Nicole described her journey since the separation as one of honesty, clarity, and finally, peace. It was the closest she had come to directly addressing Keith Urban, yet she did so with elegance and nuance. Nicole explained how the past year had forced her to confront difficult truths about herself, her marriage, and the compromises that love sometimes demands. She spoke of learning to recognize when a relationship is no longer mutually nourishing and of the strength required to step away from what had once felt permanent. While she avoided specifics about Keith or the alleged rumors surrounding him, the implications were clear. She had endured emotional distance and the quiet erosion of intimacy, and she was ready to share her story on her own terms. The media quickly interpreted her words as a subtle exposé, not of scandal, but of truth. Nicole's calm, reflective narrative exposed the reality behind the fairy tale image. It highlighted the pressure of balancing two high-profile careers, the challenges of long-distance parenting, and the emotional toll of keeping appearances intact. It also revealed her resilience, that while love can fade, dignity and personal growth can endure. By choosing introspection over exposition, she exposed what was necessary, the truth of her experience and the boundaries of her peace. In doing so, she demonstrated that real power does not lie in confrontation, but in self-possession. The exposé the public had anticipated was far more meaningful than a scandal. It was a personal testimony of endurance, clarity, and reinvention. If this story moved you, hit like, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more untold journeys behind Hollywood's most iconic moments.